So there's this deal recently with the whole WikiLeaks situation and the US government. It's hard to miss it really, given the international attention it's been receiving. A number of YouTube videos have been made on the subject, one of which was posted by Vogter2100. It was titled, "Don't be a dick." In it, he made a simple and effective point. If you don't want your country's activities to be seen by other people in a bad light, don't be a dick. The issue isn't as clear-cut as this, of course, but then again nothing really is. The issue of national security in any country is something that should be, and often is, taken seriously, and one that I have sympathy for, but that's as far as my agreement ends. At some point, accountability is important, and I suspect that to this end, the release of several 100,000 classified documents relating to United States activities overseas was released. The man most directly responsible for this, of course, is well known in media circles for this action. Currently, Mr. Assange is living, or rather hiding out, in Sweden. However, he probably shouldn't get too comfortable, because Sweden has an extradition treaty with the United States. The question on my mind is a simple one, with a not-so-simple answer. Did he break any laws? According to the US Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, yes, he broke United States laws, and quite seriously too. If Assange was within United States territory, he would definitely be fair game for any form of punishment that was within US jurisdiction. However, while this was happening, Assange was, and to the best of my knowledge still is, located in Sweden, a sovereign country in its own right and one that does not operate under US laws and jurisdictions. As such, breaking US law does not automatically mean that Assange has broken Swedish law. I say all of this to preface an exchange that I had with an individual by the name of PhysicalConservative, formerly known as Ruth Rundell. I expected some level of disagreement given the initial comment that I responded to. I did not expect the kind of hateful-sounding vitriol that I actually did get. It was rather childish. I'll include a link to the conversation. I could have conducted myself better, and I wish I had done, because I shouldn't have allowed myself to stoop to his level of infantile childishness. However, what I will do in this video is reiterate a few points I want to make abundantly clear, and which would take up a lot more comment space to explain properly, which is why I choose to make this video. The US is a superpower on the world stage, competing with other nations in a world stage. We are living on Earth, and the USA is called the United States of America, not the United States of Earth. As such, one set of laws in one country do not necessarily reflect the state of laws in another. A crime committed in one country is not automatically attributed to the offender in other countries. Indeed, any given crime in any given country might well be a perfectly legal act in another one. The United States judiciary is not an overarching power across the world, and as such, people need to recognize that the United States has limits to how far it can extend its powers. They do not necessarily reflect international law, nor do they necessarily reflect the will of the other sovereign states. Many countries have also conducted espionage in similar ways, and sought to protect their information gatherers as a result. A US spy deployed to Cold War Soviet territory would be seen as an enemy of the state in the USSR, but would possibly be seen as an unsung hero in the USA. Such is the way of things. It is also about differing points of view. Throughout our entire exchange, PhysicalConservative has continued to argue for the fact that Assange has broken US law, just like the other examples are of people that have also broken US law in the comments section. Indeed, one of the comments he posted was to ask if we should let Osama bin Laden go on the basis that he's not in the US. The problem is, Osama bin Laden broke international laws and committed several human rights violations in his attacks on the United States. Such a man should be brought to justice. Whether that be in the US, where I'm pretty sure he would never get a fair hearing, or in an impartial country which the US would never allow, is something that frankly is a moot point at this stage, given that they haven't even caught the guy yet. I can't say I'm all that surprised. After all, the question of whether there are WMDs still reverberates occasionally among the international community, given that WMDs were the justification for the pointless war we fought in Iraq. But this is somewhat besides the point. He made a valid point about the damage done to the United States and its allies. I happen to agree with this and never said otherwise, but this was not a point I wanted to address in my response, given that I didn't want to get sidetracked from discussing sovereignty issues and the fact that the Earth is a world stage with many competing countries. My argument is, and always has been, that the US is not a law unto itself and must answer to the international community for any actions it undertakes involving inter-country relations, including anything to do with law and justice. The United States of America has a right to protect its citizenry. Indeed, it is not just a right, it is a responsibility, and one specifically mentioned in the US Constitution. This much I would wholeheartedly support, but this does not extend to the right to declare that a man should be sent to the US on crimes committed against US law for a man who is not a member of the US citizenry and who rarely, if ever, has been to the United States. I could understand if, for example, the US government banned him from ever entering US territory because of this leaked information. That would be fitting and an appropriate response for someone who betrayed the United States' interests as this man has done. I could also understand seeking his being brought to justice on the basis of him breaching the terms of treaties within allied countries, and this is where it gets a bit grey. But I made a very clear point in the comment section. It's not about what the US wants. It is about what is going on within the international stage as a whole. Just because someone breaks US law doesn't mean that the US has a right to go get them. If the US has extradition treaties with other countries, and said countries including the one where the offence was committed, then the US can petition for the extradition of the alleged criminal and have them brought to justice. That is not the same thing in reality as the person being brought to justice simply on the basis that he broke US law, because, again, what may be illegal in the USA may be perfectly legitimate in other countries, and so US law matters much less outside of US jurisdiction unless the host country chooses to cooperate with the US. And that's my point. If there is a legitimate reason to have Assange brought to the US for trial, it is not because the US says it's illegal, it's because Sweden says, we agree and will extradite your guy for you. I've also been accused of putting words in his mouth, stating that he believed he was right because he is an American citizen. At no point did I actually say that he claimed to be right because he is an American citizen. That was a misrepresentation of my point, which again was that he was not considering international matters. No other country is required to say how high when the US says jump you bitches. That's not how international cooperation should work. However, his inherent bias towards the US being right in its jurisdiction was evident from his comments, and that was a statement I was trying to make. It also needed to be pointed out that motive is an important indicator here. Assange's intentions are not necessarily to see that the US suffers from harm, or that people of the US and the soldiers fighting for the US are in any way harmed. It could simply be that the information he feels important for people to know about US intentions and interests is available for people to see. I'll reiterate again in saying that I wish I'd been the better man and ignored some of his more childish and vitriolic remarks. But I let my human ego get in the way, especially when this accusation came up. I'd want him to face trial for the crimes he admitted to, yes, forgive me if that's such a horrific notion to you, and way to ignore the part where I said they shouldn't, by the way, which shows that you're just feeling free to invent arguments or ignore the things I say so you can have your little racist anti-American bullshit attitude. I'll let you determine if I'm being anti-American in the comments, but I will respond to the accusations here also. Number 1. I didn't ignore the should part. I didn't ask what he should do. I asked what he wanted. I specifically said the words, would you want them to? Not, what do you think they should do? And I got my answer. He wanted the guy dragged back in chains to US soil to face trial. I said, in poorer fashion than I'll say here, the following. The United States is not a race. The United States is comprised of people from all ethnic backgrounds, including Caucasians, of which I happen to be one. I'm not anti-American any more than PhysicalConservative is anti-British. His supreme arrogance in assuming that his country has a right to dictate to the rest of the world that just because a man has broken his country's laws means he should be dragged back in chains, which is precisely what PhysicalConservative said he wanted, says all that anyone needs to know about his elitist attitude. I know a lot of Americans that do not share his opinions, thus rendering his anti-American accusation to be nothing more than conservative nonsense of the sort that we see on Fox News. Yes, I was pissed. Should I have been? No, he's just another guy on the internet, just as I am, and his opinion on whether I'm racist or not should have no bearing on how I'm perceived by those people who matter to me. Fuck, if I was racist, why would I be involved in a long-distance relationship with someone in the United States to begin with? It doesn't make any sense. People who are racist tend to stick with their own race, and usually within their own territory, because along with racism often goes a strong sense of national pride. I've seen enough of the racist movements in the UK to know that much. But I do find it offensive that someone like this would have the audacity to accuse someone he barely has had any contact with of racism. He knows very little about me other than the videos I've produced. To close out the video, I will again reiterate my points. Assange has broken US law. The US is but one country even if it's a major player on the world stage. The question of whether there is any legitimacy in demanding Assange face trial for releasing US classified information, which by the way hasn't necessarily been deemed classified in other countries, needs to be answered. And if this question has been satisfactorily answered to those countries hosting Assange, in this case Sweden, then he's fair game for punitive action under US law. This I have never had any argument with. My point is, and always has been, that US law doesn't trump any other law, and I do not see this issue from the point of view of any one particular country. If only Physical Conservative could do the same without letting his own inherent US bias interfere with his judgment in this matter, even so far as to him playing childish, sarcastic games with people who disagree with him. But that's just my opinion.